Separated by the Salish Sea, connected by the real graps in BC. This is the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast with Aaron Schultz and Corey Ace Trelaw.
Live and in living color, at the very least, pre-recorded and live to tape in living color. It's the inaugural edition of the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast. My name is Aaron Schultz, joined by my best friend and fellow wrestling sicko, Corey Ace Trelaw in beautiful British Columbia. Ace, how's it going tonight?
That's fun, really. That's, I know it's always been close, but I'm glad to hear it officially here now. And no, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How about you?
Doing good. It's much easier when no one else is on this chat, so it's a little bit easier. Too good. Well, first and foremost, I guess we should get the 5 W's across. Just try and give as much of a background info as possible. The who, what, where, when, and why. So who? Again, my name's Aaron Schultz. Corey Ace Trelaw. We're two buddies who have been, I think we're nearing on 20 full years, like very close to it. Almost lifelong wrestling fans. We've been friends for close to 20 years. That's who we are. What we're doing the Cup Check Wrestling Podcast, a weekly podcast that will touch on the wacky world of professional wrestling, everything in terms of the mainstream promotions in Canada and the United States, the majors like your WWE and your AEW, while having a spot for our local independent promotions in British Columbia and just any other news that pops around in this crazy business that's predetermined. We're in BC. We grew up in Nanaimo. Corey remains in Nanaimo. I'm in Kamloops, the Salish Sea, the Coquihalla Highway. Nothing can separate this bond. We are here.
No way, baby.
Virtually to bring you this podcast every single week. And that's the when. For the most part, we're going to drop this podcast a little bit earlier, just right before the Royal Rumble takes place in, I believe, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. So drop sometime Friday night, Saturday morning on January 30th or January 31st. It'll be before February at the very least. That will guarantee. Otherwise, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong.
No, I think for us, our big thing with the inaugural episode, we really wanted to try to get our thoughts out before the Royal Rumble, mainly because eventually we'll get to that. But eventually we do want to talk some wrestling before the end of this. But yeah, essentially, Schultz was kind of setting the stage there. This is more kind of for the first little bit at least, we kind of want you to get to know us. I remember I was talking to another buddy about it, and I was saying this kind of feels almost like an audition for your attendance. So
it's like you're a person for a play or something, eh?
Yeah, like it's just this is our shot saying like, hey, why don't you give us a shot?
Yep. We'll introduce you. We'll open ourselves up to you, and hopefully you come along with us for the ride as we get into this crazy podcast about a crazy business that's spiked our mental health and has plummeted our mental health and everything in between. And you're kind of touching about trying to do this at a time because in wrestling, obviously it's predetermined. It's not technically a real sport, even though I like to say real graps. There's no real off season in wrestling. It kind of goes just around the year. It's not like, the winter in Major League Baseball or the summer in hockey or anything like that. But with the Royal Rumble, it's kind of right before the Super Bowl, which is right before football season ends. That means there's no Monday Night Football competing against any professional wrestling that would air on Mondays, formerly WCW Nitro, or to this day, Monday Night Raw. So it almost seems like a good chance. Well, it's a couple months before WrestleMania, so there's that window of getting into your peak season where your interest in WWE, but now there's a whole bunch of wrestling that's accessible, but it just felt like the beginning of the season, it feels like, I suppose. So we figured that this would be a good time.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like for a lot of lapsed fans, Rumble's kind of where you tune in. So, like, if there was an off season, you could argue maybe like from post summer to now is kind of, historically speaking, especially in WWE specifically, that's kind of the time where nothing too crazy happens. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's a New Year thing. Maybe it's but it kind of felt. We had pitched this idea not super long, funny enough. Like, I think it's probably been a month or two we've been talking about this, but any beginnings, my thought process was, well, just before the Rumble, because I mean, new fans, old fans, lapsed fans, like the Rumble's kind of the one that everyone tunes into. Even I'd almost argue more so than WrestleMania for some people, like that. It's kind of the big show for a lot of people.
It's kind of easy to fall back into. I mean, say if you're a fan who
Yeah.
hadn't tuned in for years, I mean, the Royal Rumble is as easy a gimmick as you can to get into. I mean, two
You're going to
folks
see
start
30
and
guys you might not seen to in forever, right? Like,
exactly the current stars, the former stars. It's all about throwing folks over the top rope. Both feet must hit the floor, and it's just all about pops. It's basically, I think we'll talk about later about why we like wrestling, but the Royal Rumble gives you a petri dish of just about everything you enjoy. We'll get to in just a little bit, but one more thing before the when in our 5Ws here. We're aiming to do this at least once a week, likely on Sundays. We're dropping this one early because trying to balance the schedules of real life too. But for the most part, expect us once a week at the very least, likely Sunday night, Monday morning for the pod to drop, just so you can begin the Monday to Friday back to work rush, I suppose, or back to the regular grind. Hopefully, a good way to start off your week. And yeah, I think that takes it. And now the why. I wanted to make sure we had enough time for the why because I really had to think about the why. Because I kind of got stumped. So over the summer, there's a huge story, the passing of Hulk Hogan, and it made you really think just how mainstream of a star Hogan became. Because I had coworkers asking, Aaron, why wrestling? Like, what's the hook? Like, how do people get into it? Like, what is it that stands out? And I was kind of struggling because I like a lot of things about it. So I want to make sure we had a lot of time for this. So I ask you, Ace, we all have a story, a silly story of how we kind of got into it, but I don't think you ever actually told me this even outside of a podcast scenario. How
oh, you've
did
never heard
you?
mine? Oh
I
no.
never, I cannot, gun to my head, I cannot tell you. How the hell did you get
Oh.
involved into professional
It's
wrestling?
funny because
Not yet.
I feel like I've been telling this story to anybody who will listen. Um, the year was 2004. I was 9 years old, which is a very sobering fact to say out loud now. Yeah, I was not, and I remember I didn't have a whole lot of wrestling in my life when I was younger. I remember my papa was always into it, my mom's dad, and my mom and her dad never got along, still don't. He's still here. Uh, and it was funny. So wrestling was always kind of like, oh, that's that thing your papa watches. So I was like, oh yeah. And I think I had an old wrestling game, but yeah. But I'll always remember. Yeah, it was the summer of 2004. I'm flipping through the channels one late Thursday night. I'm staying at my dad's. And he was, nowhere. Or he was much more liberal than my mom was about staying up later. And so I'm watching wrestling way too late. Well, actually, I'm watching TV way too late,
Just
and I'm
peak
flipping through.
divorce dad behavior here. You got to hand
Oh
it
yeah,
to
I'm sure you'll get more as we go through.
trying to win the cool parent
But
award every single
oh yeah,
year.
ice cream, just Um, but yeah, so I'm flipping through, and I remember didn't know it at the time, but I'm flipping through, and SmackDown comes on, and JBL's talking. He's got his undisputed title, white cowboy hat, and this is right before SummerSlam. So, and like all I remembered was just this guy talking so much trash. I was like, who is this? Like, what a dick. Like, who is this guy? And I remember I asked my dad, I was like, what is this? And it's funny knowing, like, if you knew him now, I know obviously Schultze does, but I remember the first thing he said was, oh, that's just that wrestling, it's all fake. You don't want to watch that anyways. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, okay. But just before I could change the channel, the lights go out because JBL was talking about how he didn't have an opponent for SummerSlam, and he's the wrestling god, and he's so. And the lights go out, and the Undertaker grabs him by the throat, choke slam, you, me, SummerSlam, and here I am, 22 years later now, Because I remember seeing that and being like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Um, yeah, and when I was really young,
Mhm.
wrestling was definitely the hyper focus. Like it was my North Star of it. Like everything revolved around
Mhm.
that. I used to always say, buddies over the years have always told me you got a really good memory. And I used to always say, like, I could equate it with, okay, well, '09. So like, okay, so Randy Orton was champ. And like, and I think that has to do with like it's been a constant for so long in my life. Or if I'm
Mhm.
trying to remember, I'm talking to an old friend. What was the last time we met up? Okay, well,
Mhm.
who was wrestling around that time? That so that Roman was there, so it had to be after 2012. Like
Mhm.
it's little things like that where it's been a constant in my life, for better or worse, because there's definitely been times when, I'm 30 now, just turned 30 in
Mhm.
March. And there's definitely
Closer
been
to
times where I've fallen
31.
out of it.
You're old. Death is imminent.
31's coming up real quick. Um, in 2 months away. But yeah, so it's been something that's just been a constant, for better or worse, because there's definitely been times that I've dipped with it and been like, this
Mhm.
is it's kind of funny too. Even when we pitched this is
Mhm.
probably one of the lower, I won't say least, but it's definitely one of the lower times I've been super invested, especially in WWE.
Mhm.
It comes and goes in valleys, especially when
Mhm.
you've been watching it for as long as you have, right? But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm getting sidetracked now. But yeah, it all started summer
Yep.
2004.
I gotta ask the follow up. I've been sitting on my hands, like on the edge of my seat, wanting to ask you. Did Tim take you to SummerSlam at the Galaxy Cinemas that year, or did you have to wait a little bit, or what happened there?
So interestingly enough, I didn't know that they were playing at the Galaxy theaters. So for those of you who don't what, most of you, well, some of our friends who are watching will probably know.
Mhm.
Schulzie and I actually met through the theater in Nanaimo. They used to play the wrestling pay-per-views every month. And I
Mhm.
remember, so not SummerSlam, because I didn't know, but we were in Rutherford Mall one day in, I guess, September of 2004.
Mhm.
And actually, the reason I'm playing Unforgiven right now was because
If you're
this was the
watching,
first show.
yeah, if you're watching the YouTube video rather than listening to pod, Ace, hopefully you don't get this flagged. I think this should go
Oh,
with
yeah, I didn't even think of that.
air commentary, hopefully. But this
We're good.
was
Yeah.
your first pay per view, and
It was,
specifically,
yeah.
I want to say it's your ride back home. I want you to tell this story because that one's
Yes.
ingrained
Okay.
in
So
my
you have
memory.
maybe this was the story I've told you instead of JBL.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so me, my dad, and my sister, that's the first show. I remember walking through the mall a couple weeks before, and we see a poster of the Kane one, Insane Pain Kane. And I'm like, whoa, they played them at the theater, and back then, I think tickets were like 12, $13 versus,
Mhm.
well, what was the pay-per-views at that point?
Must have been like
34 Canadian, or
$40 Canadian, I think, if you're just ordering on your
yeah,
PVR back home. So think of it, $12 for a ticket, get a large pop, buy
yeah,
some snacks, or in my case, try and sneak in some snacks. And
right,
it beats just buying at home when you don't have buddies to watch with, or
100%.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
For my dad's sake, I guess you could argue, because if he was paying for me, my sister, and him, that probably actually I always remember WrestleMania time, him not being huge on the theater, because those
Mhm.
tickets were like what, 25, 30, and
Yeah, they boosted
three
that one because
kids.
I think Mania was like $50 or something. It was always a little bit
Yeah.
more expensive, but
There was a
anyway,
few that we didn't see at the theater because they always, they
yeah.
wanted a little more piece of the pie. But yeah, so Unforgiven was the first show that I saw,
Mhm.
and I was like, I honestly, I'm sure you could probably attest to this too. I remember as a kid, it the theater helped it feel so much more larger than life.
Mhm.
Where I've talked to different buddies over the years about wrestling,
Mhm.
and especially I think a big thing, especially for people who I've met online, was a lot of them came online for the community of it, right?
Mhm.
Most wrestling fans, I'm sure, have in common the past of getting bullied, or not a lot of people watched it. You didn't really have a lot of people to
Mhm.
talk about it.
Mhm.
And I'd have buddies that would be like, "Man, you get to go to the theater every year or every month for that? That's so sick! Like that's awesome!" And we built
Yep.
a community. I mean, hell, that's how we met, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it was awesome. And I remember the story you're thinking of was at the end of the show. I was heartbroken because Randy Orton was youngest champ at that time. He had just won the world title,
Mhm.
and he's fighting Triple H. It's probably gonna come up in a bit here for those who are watching on the video. And yeah, I'm heartbroken because Triple H beat him, and Batista ran in and Flair ran in, and that was my introduction to the world of shenanigans in pro wrestling. So
Being
anyways, we're in
annoyed
the
by
cab on the
Triple H
way
is
home.
going to be a theme of this pod over the
Yeah,
couple
that's
long
definitely not the
episodes.
last time you're gonna hear his name. But yeah, so we're on the ride back. Um, and so it's me, my dad, and my sister in this cab, and I'm
Mhm.
pissed, right? I'm inconsolable. And I remember the cab driver. Sorry, my cat's trying to jump in here. Uh,
Lita's doing a
I
cameo.
know
Lita's interfering here like
her name is
Flair
Lena.
Batista.
Yeah, exactly. This is how Flair ran in. He was looking all cute. But yeah. So,
Yeah,
anyways,
Darby though.
I'm so mad. And he's like, "What's bugging you, man?" And I guess he, one of those lapsed Attitude Era fans.
Mhm.
I was like, "Oh, Triple H won. He took the title from Randy." And I remember he went. He's like, "Ah, he probably cheated." And I mean, now I hear that, and I'm like, "Yeah," but at that time, I was like, "Did you see it? Like, how'd you know?" Yeah, he didn't cheat. Batista ran out. Rick ran out. Then they hit Kyoto, and I probably didn't. I don't even know if it was Kyoto. That might have been Hebner back then.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was gutted. That was my first maybe my first heartbreak in some ways.
Fair play. Yeah, we kind of got into the world of professional wrestling closer around the same age, not the same year, but around the same age. I
Yeah.
got in probably when I was around 10. I credit my brother actually, and if he's listening to this, thank you or F you for getting me into wrestling, making this my personality, I suppose. But he was the one, he went to his friend's house. I forget the names, but WrestleMania 22 was the first show that I was told of, and I was being told all this stuff up from my brother. Oh my God, it was insane. This one guy put another guy through a table that was on fire. The one guy was facing the boss, the owner of the company. He jumped off a ladder and put him through a table. And there's a small luchador, Rey Mysterio. He's like 5 foot nothing. He's beating giants and he's the world champion now. I'm like, this sounds great. And it took me a while to get into it. Like the first story I kind of sunk my teeth into was Shawn Michaels was the story was he was going up against Vince McMahon, the owner, the chairman of the board. It was the classic. I'm sure like our Attitude Era homies listening to this are used to the biggest worker versus boss storyline, Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon, but it was just Vince McMahon still being the big mean boss as always, and Shawn Michaels was the hero in this case. It was about overcoming the odds, but then the eventual reuniting of D Generation X, Shawn Michaels and Triple H together, and I thought that reunion was epic. And then all the humor that followed the months later, they're doing the Crocs chop, suck it, and I'm sure like we've had many folks in elementary school, like whether it's like grade 6, grade
Yeah.
7, I'm sure we've told each other to suck and do the cross chop X amount of times. And then there were some other bits of potty humor, like giving Vince McMahon a rooster and saying, I heard you like cocks. Just complete stuff that 10-year-old me would just find hilarious. And looking back at those DVDs, I do enjoy it because like I'm sure it's just nostalgia, I should say. But I'm curious. I go back to around like seeing what the reports were, what were the reviews around that time when I was becoming a fan. And it kind of sucks because like everyone's like, yeah, this kind of sucked. This is kind of like a bad time to be a fan. You should be
Not to
confident
me.
if you're watching 06 or 07. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, well, at least I guess I can enjoy the bad part of it. At least I kind of got through that when I was young and it didn't deter me from going. So that's how I got into it. And then credit to my mom for not minding us watching wrestling at the time. And a lot of that stuff in 06, like everyone always wants to say like the Attitude Era was like peak inappropriateness, like especially with how they treated women. 06 was not much better. In fact, 06 might have been a little bit worse looking back at some of that, but I digress. But one thing that really kept me as a fan, a couple months later, WWE was touring, and every 2 years or so, I guess they would come to Victoria and Vancouver to do a live event, one that wouldn't be televised. They were coming to Victoria, and this is in early 2007. The SmackDown roster and ECW roster coming. My mom makes sure me, my brother, our friend gets tickets. I saw my original favorite wrestler, RVD, live. That meant a lot. I saw stars like Dave Batista. You folks listening to this may think, that's a Guardians of the Galaxy guy. Nah, to me, he's always Big Dave. He's the animal.
Like
Damn it.
the,
And then The Undertaker did an appearance. CM Punk was just on the up in WWE. He wasn't even a year on the main roster yet. Saw him. But most notably, though, I saw, and he was applauded at the time. It was 4 months before Chris Benoit did the thing. I saw Chris Benoit 4 months before he murdered his son and his wife and then took his own life for the biggest, darkest day, arguably, in wrestling. So that's, unfortunately, I'll always remember that house show too. My first live event was, I saw Chris Benoit before he did the thing. I don't know.
I mean, it's not nothing. It's definitely one of those. I mean, because I think most wrestling fans have that list of like ones you've seen. It is a rare one, especially for those of a certain era.
No doubt. Oh, God. Real quick, I wanted to just sneak the story in. So, obviously, like, we've been watching this for a while now. I had, well, two quick stories. One, I have a friend in Saskatchewan, became a fan as soon as WWE got into Netflix, became a little bit more accessible for those without cable. This friend did not hear about Chris Benoit, and I just thought, how the hell, where do you even start trying to explain how Chris Benoit, that whole thing happened? The double murder suicide and talking about CTE and everything. But the other one was trying to think, Our Lady Peace. So Our Lady Peace is touring around recently, and Our Lady Peace sang Whatever, which was Chris Benoit's theme song. And for years and years, they never sang this, they never performed this song live. And we were actually having a joke about this, how we could picture Vince McMahon, hey pal, you know that song? That was a huge hit. Never play it again, god damn it. That was a joke for us for the longest time. And until recently, they didn't, and they decided to bring it back. They were going to retake Whatever. And so I had a coworker that saw Our Lady Peace in Kelowna and asked, did they play Whatever? What's that song? I said, we're in a meeting. Like, we're in a meeting to start the week. I'm like, the Chris Benoit song. It's like, oh, yes, they did. Yes, they did. And then my boss says, I can't say I know the song all too well, but I know being affiliated with Chris Benoit is not a good thing. So,
unfortunately, a banger though. So it's what are you gonna do?
It slaps so hard.
It's a really good song. It is a really good song.
Unbelievable. I think I could play it after. Anyways, but yeah, so that's kind of we got in, and going back to what I said earlier, just what keeps you in, because I think you were talking about a little bit with the cab driver too. Like, you can tell he used to be a fan, he's not anymore, but wrestling can be kind of cyclical, I suppose. Like, you have your fans who watched during the golden age where Hogan and Savage were on top. Maybe they were WCW fans. Maybe they're around when Austin and The Rock were on top in the late 90s. Maybe folks like us, who our guy at the time was John Cena. He was the biggest star. But sometimes you can see the same stories recycled over and over. Wrestling's not too complicated like that, so folks can get out of it. But some folks like us, this is our lives, I suppose. So,
well, it's interesting because even when I'm out of it, sorry, but I was gonna say, even when I'm out of it, I'm never really fully. You know what I mean? Like, even if I'm like, man, it's bad right now. Like, COVID was a time for that, right? When I was like, man, but you're still like, I think after a certain amount of time, when you've been so, I won't say involved because it's not like I was doing anything, but like, so just or surrounding yourself with the world for as long as you have, there's always something you're gonna hear. There's always something you're gonna, it's impossible. Even if I'm like, man, like right now, recently, WWE's kind of been on a bit of a decline in a lot of people's minds. Even if I'm not watching weekly, I'm still consuming every bit of news because it's just everywhere. And a lot of my friends follow it and a lot of stuff. It's just, a thing of interest for us, right? Like, it's, it's there.
And I'd agree. Like, I mean, my algorithms, like, it's going to take decades just to change my viewing habits on social media. Even like, if I won't watch shows every week, I'll still find out what's happening. And then I'll still want to read a newsletter or listen to podcasts, ironically enough. But I guess that's the thing. Like, and also, I noticed it especially too when Hogan passed away over the summer. I had folks who never watched wrestling send me like, "Are you okay?" I will be fine. Like, Hogan was a complicated individual,
It's
I
it's
suppose.
interesting. I remember us kind of bonding over this, but it's interesting being almost the spokesperson for wrestling. Like I had
Yes.
I had people reaching out to me from like grade school, being
Mhm.
like, "Man, Corey, like I don't know if you still watch. I know I haven't seen you in 17 years, but like, do you hear? Like, it's interesting because especially with I think in the Hogan case where, a lot of people might not be super familiar with a lot of
Mhm.
his let's just say issues. Um, it's just
Away
like,
from the
oh man,
camera.
yeah, the he rips the shirt, right?
Mhm.
And it's like, yeah, I might feel maybe more of a connection inevitably one day if Cena passes or
Mhm.
like a Randy or but yeah, I don't know, like I didn't really have that connection with Hogan. I mean, I was 2004, so he was there, and he was there in '06 for you too. But like,
Yeah. But I guess
other than just
just
hearing about how great he was in the '80s and '90s, right there.
and outside of that, like I've watched much of Hogan's stuff like from the 80s and 90s and taken away from just what he did and how he would entertain us or folks our age, but just he was a star at the time. Like his death was around the same time as Ozzy Osbourne's, and you could just see everyone whose prime was in their 80s, whether it's the best time of their lives. I mean, Hogan was kind of part of that, the rock and wrestling age, and so because he kind of became a mainstream star in that sense, uh, folks like, oh, wrestling bat signal. That's the wrestling trigger is being pulled and how it's calling us, I suppose. And then they go to folks like us who are watching consistently or at least consuming consistently. And yeah, it's interesting how that almost brings you back into like you almost feel obligated, like, no, this is my thing. I'm the wrestling messenger, I suppose. I'm the spokesman
Yeah,
for this business.
it's interesting. It's like, yes, yeah, I have been briefed. Thank you. Hogan is his family has been contact. Like,
Hmm.
it is a weird. It
Hmm.
is. It's a weird world, man. It is
It
such
is.
a strange pastime. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
like, we were talking about there's no off season, but it's just there's so many different facets or faucets of life that it just
Yeah.
bleeds into.
So I
And
guess that's a
it's wild.
question coming in because when I got this question framed to me, like, what is it about it? Why do you like wrestling? And that's the thing. There are so many things that I like about it. Like some things I prioritize more, some things not, but still enjoy. What keeps you into this, quite frankly? Like, what keeps you into this 20 so years into this
Mm.
when so many folks can fall off easily?
Yeah, this summer it'll be 22, I guess.
Your old and
I
death is
you know
imminent.
it's interesting because it changes as you go through, I think, different
Mhm.
eras, like
Mhm.
so that 2004 period for me, like I was obsessed. Like I'm talking, I remember one of the stories I always used to talk about is like I used to wet my hair in the back sink of the classroom and spike it up like I was Randy Orton, right? And um so like those early kid years, you're just like, this is the greatest thing ever. You're not really thinking critically,
Mhm.
it's just the thing you like. So you watch it and I remember around like a lot of kids at that point, around the PG era, it's kind of like, man, I miss the blood and Cena kind of sucks now and he's sort of lame and and then early or I guess mid-teens more so, then it's like, I was really into the stuff like, oh, the Daniel Bryans or the Punks or the very technical stuff. I started watching a bit of ROH, I remember about around that time. So it was like your Kevin Steen, your um for those astute fans who might be lapsing me, I actually had a wrestling YouTube channel around that time too,
How
where
did we bury this lead? We should have led
I
with
know,
this.
yeah. We probably should have. I formerly known as Ace the Wrestling Nut.
Formally
Um,
known, you're still kind of known
well,
as like,
still, yeah. Um, but yeah, so around that time, I started kind of getting into more like the technical stuff, and I'd watch, a bit of ROH, and I remember like 2013-ish. So I'm like 18 now, and I'm, you're starting to go out more. You're doing stuff. You're being a kid. And again, yeah, it was something that I always watched, but I just kind of, in the background or but it was interesting. Like it definitely changed more from like that kind of like work rate style for me, where now it's a lot of times it well for a bit it was the comedy. Like a good comedic thing was always funny for me. But yeah, I don't know. The more time's going on now, it's I really sink my teeth into like a good story or a good character.
Mhm.
So I'd say what keeps me into it now
Mhm.
is, stuff like it's obviously played out now, but when the bloodline was really hot, or a lot of like, the mid, 21, 22 MJF stuff, like that stuff with Punk, and something that I could really be like, man, this is cinema was the word they kept throwing around, right? It's what we do. Um, and so it was a lot more of that. So I find it a bit harder now.
Mhm.
It, I don't know. For me, I think present day, it's a connection to my past. And I
Mhm.
kind of learned that a lot this last year with Cena,
Mhm.
where we had kind of a year to say goodbye in that sense, but it always also kind of reminds you like it's coming.
Mhm.
And I think that's the coolest thing for me now, where it's something I can see as, oh, I watched that when I was 13 and I didn't know nothing. I thought, or, when I was a little kid, just having fun, just happy to be there.
Mhm.
So a lot of times when I watch something and it's really good now, I think of, that 9-year-old kid that, you know, fucking fell in love with this. Like just
Mhm.
it's such a wacky, crazy, stupid, just interesting world. There's so many stories that come out of it, not even just on camera, but you start to follow these guys throughout their real life too, like a guy like Jericho, for instance, right now in the news, it's, is he coming back to WWE? Is he going to finish with AEW? And, obviously I followed the character of Chris Jericho for the last 20 years, but, I've also been following Chris Irving. I've seen what he's done, when he took his break and he, tried acting I remember watching his YouTube series when I was at 17, was it 2012, 2011?
Mhm.
Where he was trying to make it as an actor in LA. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned Dave Batista, seeing him transform into a household name for people who don't even know he was a wrestler, right? Like
Or even,
it,
okay,
you
yeah,
know,
quickly, The Rock, for
yeah,
example. There are folks that
yeah,
recognize Dwayne Johnson as Dwayne Johnson,
oh,
the actor,
100%.
more than The Rock. There are some folks out there, and that boggles my
Yeah.
mind.
And so for me, it's
Yeah.
just you follow these guys and whether you love them or you hate them, or, you invest in their stories. Like, again, we mentioned
Mhm.
Triple H earlier. Like I remember as a kid, obviously seeing him as a wrestler, but there was a time in like 2014, 15, like we looked at him as like these, when's
Mhm.
Vince gonna leave? Like this guy, you see what he's doing with NXT, and
Mhm.
it's interesting just to see, even I'm not the biggest Triple H fan right now currently, but like there was a time when it's like, man, he was supposed to be the next guy. He was supposed to be the Messiah, who was
Mhm.
gonna lead us into the new era, and it's
Mhm.
yeah, I'm rambling now, but it's interesting just to follow these guys for as long as you do, and
Mhm.
you have your own life obviously, and it's not your entire world, but
Yeah.
you're following them, you're seeing what they're up to, especially nowadays. You can follow them on
Mhm.
Instagram and see what they're eating for breakfast, and if their
It's
plane's late,
easier.
it's
It is
crazy.
almost like the never-ending story in a sense,
Yeah,
where stuff that may have happened 5 years ago, you can always circle back to because those seeds had
yep,
been planted, or you're just seeing how these folks evolve over time. Uh, for myself, because yeah, there's many things. There'll always be folks' preference on how wrestling is done and or how it's presented, and they think that's the right way, and that's the only way to do it over time. Because I think, like most folks, like because of its exposure, WWE became most folks' first form of professional wrestling just because of the exposure it had, at least
of
from when
course.
I was growing up. So you get a bunch of things that of aspects of pro wrestling that you may enjoy more than others. Like you may want to be there for the spectacle of the entrance, or you may want to be a part of a hot crowd, or you may want to see someone deliver an incredible promo speaking on the mic. You may want to see an all-time great angle like Steve Austin spraying Vince McMahon with a beer truck, for example, or the quality of the wrestling itself. And even then, whether it's like the hard hitting aspect of in Japan, where you just hit people as hard as you can in safe spots for the most part, or it could be the high flying action that you'd see at Arena Mexico in Mexico City, Lucha Libre, CMLL. It could be more high flying wrestling as well, or technical ground based wrestling, or wrestling that tries to make it look more like a fight rather more than a performance or maybe something overly choreographed. I think what keeps me in, it's when wrestling is at its best. It is my favorite thing to watch because it's such a complicated partnership between multiple parties. I mean, you're
So
basically
much has to go right.
putting on a fight. Yeah. You have to have so much trust in, you have not only have to have so much trust in each other, but you have to have the skills to lay it out. And then you have to be able to have the brain to lay it out because ideally it's like going to a movie or a play where the goal is entertain these fans. Can you make them suspend their disbelief and get them emotionally invested into your match, whether it involves weapons or whether it's a technical spectacle or whether it's high flying? Is there a way for you to get these fans, okay, what are we going to see here? Or maybe they're dead to start, they're dead quiet, and then they're just losing their minds at the end of it all at what was presented. It's the best stuff, and it's so good. And trust me, there's bad wrestling. Like, just like others bad movies, there's comically bad wrestling. Then
I've
there's
seen it.
bad,
Yeah, it's
boring wrestling. We've seen it all. But
Right.
the best wrestling is so good. And I think we're blessed because I think we get a lot more of it nowadays compared to, say, when we were growing up. At least that's how I kind of view it back. The best of wrestling is so good. It's worth eating any crap along the way. But the bar has been raised over the years. But yeah, the tippy top of it, that is what will always bring me back, I suppose.
I guess that's also if you want to look at it from like an optimistic point of view, it's always the thought that, it's like the gambler stuck at the table. Could always get better. Like sure, right now there's a lot of stuff that I really don't like them doing.
Mhm.
I'm one of those pesky traditionalists, so I despise logos on the mats. You know, but there's always that all it takes is just one thing to make it better. And
Mhm.
it's not knowing when to leave the table, maybe in some cases.
Yeah,
And
you don't want those. It's weird because, like, for TV shows and movies, like, say, for example, like, I'll throw shows that had, like, at best mixed, but sometimes critically panned endings, like, for great shows, whether it's a Game of Thrones or a Dexter. I never watched an episode of either of those shows because I was told of how it ends, like, the ending's not too good.
yeah.
And I don't want a sunk cost. I want to be rewarded for my investment. But with wrestling here, I think that's the one thing where I'm like, I'm gonna wait around for it to get good again because there's
Yeah.
always boom
That's your
periods. There's
sunk
always
cost
times.
for sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I've come close. And you were talking about times where you feel like you were kind of getting out of it. Like, I've had those chances too. I want to say my first real chance of completely falling off, I want to say it was like around 2015. It'd been a few years where Monday Night Raw had gone to 3 hours. It was just far too long of a show. Uh, Friday Night SmackDown wasn't really its own unique show at that point, too. There wasn't really much accessible on television. I really wasn't. It was kind of like right before streaming kind of took off. Like, nowadays, if nothing in North America, or pardon me, nothing in the United States or Canada is doing good for you, you could spend $30 to watch CMLL Lucha Libre on YouTube from Mexico City. You can subscribe to New Japan Pro Wrestling. There's so many independents you can kind of see throughout YouTube. At the time, I was either not curious or not able to kind of see other forms, but WWE is kind of going down. You know what? My favorite at the time, CM Punk, left the company. They were sort of transitioning the torch from the face of the franchise from John Cena, who was getting close to a decade at the time. They were transitioning to Roman Reigns, but it's not like nowadays where he's the Rock's cousin, he's the tribal chief. They tried to make a guy who didn't have the personality of John Cena into another John Cena, and it just did not work. And there's no real competition that was good to watch in Canada. Like, I think maybe you had some Ring of Honor shows that air in the middle of the night that you can get on one of those American Fox stations. I can't remember if TNA was off Spike TV in Canada at that point, but basically that was as close as
Destination
I
America
got.
for a bit too, right?
It was, yeah. I can't. It was
Yeah,
2014. I think it's when they lost Spike. I can't remember, but
yeah,
either way,
I
there
think
was nothing. It was a barren wasteland for a little bit. And this is where I give credit to my brother too, because he was watching NXT at the point before it became like developmental, like their version of minor league baseball or the American Hockey League. It was a mixture of folks that they were trying to develop, but folks who are on the independent scene who are stars who may have not gotten a look in previous generations of WWE or the WWF because they weren't the biggest guys in the world, but super entertaining. My brother got into that first. I never bothered, but my brother spearheaded a trip in 2015. WrestleMania was in the Bay Area, kind of close to San Francisco. He organized, pulled out all the logistics to get he, his buddies, my mom, and myself all the way over there. And that WrestleMania week completely rejuvenated me as a fan. Like, to be able to be surrounded by that many folks who are this involved in pro wrestling as you, and then you're seeing all these spectacular shows, like just the spectacle and the quality of WrestleMania that year, especially. And then other good shows along the way, whether it be, I don't think we went to WrestleCon that year, but that's well regarded. The NXT live event show was really good too. And I just left that trip thinking, we are so back. And that gave me another couple of years until about late 2018, 2019, when WWE was really in the like really going down.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon
Yeah,
has lost his mind. And this was right before All Elite Wrestling AEW formed. New Japan Pro Wrestling was really, really good at the time. And they had a lot of stars that are on AEW still nowadays, but New Japan just did not have as many of those big events to really scratch your itch, I suppose. So that was a time where I was like, yeah, man, this might be it. But then AEW launched. I enjoyed AEW, and then WWE eventually, for a variety of reasons, whether wherever you want to pinpoint where their new boom period started, it got better again. And then all of a sudden, it's like, yeah, you know what? This is okay. It always comes and goes, but in the end, the best of pro wrestling will always be worth everything in between.
I don't know if you remember this, but I've got a story about that 2019 time. For I think it was Ricochet. Anyways, it was Canada Day, 2019. I'm at a bar in Parksville with a couple buddies. I think it was on a Monday too. And you had texted me being like, "Oh, did you see Ricochet won the US?" I think that was what it was. It was like, "Oh, did you see Rick?" And I was so out at that point that like I was just like, "Dude, what do you do? Like it's Canada Day. Like, don't you touch grass? Like, what do you?" Um,
Oh, me
but
to touch
yeah,
grass. God,
you know, of
Ace the
all
Wrestling would never.
no. But yeah, it's interesting because yeah, there's definitely been times where I've just been like, "Man, this is terrible." It- you know, there's times when you get more back into it afterwards because of it. And it was interesting. We always joke. For those you don't know, my fiance Brooke, I recently got her into wrestling as well. And
That poor soul. How could he do that to her?
I will say I love the idea of growing wrestling. That being said, there's too much to catch up on. There's not like you can't get into it's too late. If you haven't been watching already for yeah, you can't do it because there's so many little things that she just has no idea about. Because she really got into it in 24. So when we went to Survivor Series, when
Yeah,
we
it
went to
was in
Vancouver a couple years
Vancouver
ago,
that year. That was our first group
and
outing.
she like nothing. Like she's paid attention since, but like it's always been interesting to me to think that like I remember using this example with you with a friend of ours who was into wrestling in like 2016, 17, who had just also gotten into it. And I remember saying to you, like, it's interesting. I have no idea how somebody can know who Braun Strowman is, but not know Eddie Guerrero.
Mhm,
Where, like, you could know Eddie and then not watch it anymore, but how do you just watch it now and not know Eddie, right? So
mhm.
there's so much to catch up on. So,
Yeah.
for
Time,
those who are thinking of getting into wrestling, don't. But if you're already lapsed and you want to hop back in, this is the time. This
yep.
is it.
Time's arrow marches forward, but it is nice to explore. Like, it's kind of harder now because there's just so much programming available. I mean, even
Yeah.
just looking at what will happen on a week without like a big show like the Royal Rumble on Saturday. Like, you got Monday Night Raw for WWE, you got Tuesday NXT, also WWE. You've got Wednesday night AEW Dynamite. You got Thursday TNA Impact, which I guess we should eventually pay attention to. They're technically Canadian content, but uh, I'm sure we'll have time for TNA another day. But Friday Night SmackDown, also WWE. Saturday Night Collision, AEW. And then there's some sort of big show from both those companies or different companies all over the world on the weekend. And it's just a lot to keep up on. But if you decide on one company or just decide, like, okay, I'm just going to do my best to maybe watch one show a week or something, then catch up on social media. It is a lot of fun. I haven't taken a chance to like really dive into the video library on Netflix. The old WWE network was really handy at being able to go back 20, 30, 40 something years.
Yeah.
And it is fun to go back and explore and see all the different kind of boom periods and all the different kind of low points. It's fun to be able to explore, I suppose. And granted, I ruined it a lot for myself watching as a young kid because I was always interested in stats and results. I spoiled a lot of pay-per-view results growing up, and so anytime we got some DVDs, I'm like, oh man, I know how this ends, and that kind of ruined my enjoyment of maybe watching wrestling or catching up at the time. But no, but hey, if you have time, like, there's still stuff that we don't know, for example, or we don't
Oh, are
play
you kidding? There's lots
because
I don't know.
we've been watching 20s. Like, we got folks tell us about Stampede Wrestling, like the big independent territory in Canada, based in Western Canada back in the days. Like, that was well before our time, and we haven't had a chance to really catch up. So, but also hear it for folks who have also watched wrestling a long time. Don't gatekeep. Like, be a good fan. We're open their doors for everyone. Don't gatekeep.
I definitely used to be one of
friends.
those. You know what's funny? For the longest time, I definitely, I heard an interesting theory. A sidetrack, an interesting theory about why wrestling fans gatekeep, and it tracks in my mind. So many wrestling fans where they say, like, the classic, like, oh, you like that band? Name five song, right? But for so many people who it's like, oh, you watch wrestling, like, oh, you don't remember WrestleMania 21, right? So many kids, you and I can attest to this, were bullied for liking wrestling. And a
Yeah.
lot of slurs that I won't repeat, a lot of just derogatory,
The
and it's
problem for
interesting.
sorry, the problem for us growing up too is late 2000s. UFC was rising like no tomorrow too, and that was a thing as anything because that those young adults or those teens, it's hard to replicate real honest to god fighting that's not traditional boxing. And I'd say the UFC, especially with the first season of The Ultimate Fighter and then the rivalry with Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, or Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture, and then George St. Pierre was a huge star in Canada, like, UFC became popular, and that's why it's like, it's the fake fighting. Oh man, those guys aren't tough. And a reason up until recently, one of my all-time favorites was Brock Lesnar, because that was sort of my battle cry, was this fake wrestler becoming
He
the
can do
UFC
it,
World
yeah.
Heavyweight Champion. He did it for real. And so that was my battle cry. And then about a decade later, CM Punk tried to do the same thing and
Yeah, that's
failed
another story.
miserably. It was comically bad.
But
Props to him for
but
doing
no,
it, though. But man.
the bit that I was gonna say on the gatekeeping though is so
Mhm.
much of it comes, I think, from a place of pain, where a lot of kids were bullied for watching it. So it's like when they see these new fans coming in now, it's like, no, 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 like you gotta suffer if you want to get in here, buddy. Like I was,
Suffer.
I was called
Yeah.
horrible things for
Mhm. Mhm.
and to me that tracks. I've never gotten the mentality of it, but I can see how somebody would arrive at that conclusion. I always say it, especially with sports. Like you and I were both big Blue Jay fans. When the Blue Jays do good, people jump on the bandwagon, and a lot of times fans have a problem with that. I've never gotten that. I've always been like, the more the merrier. You want to talk Bo Bichette's trade, or signing with the Mets? Great.
Mhm.
You want to talk about Vladdy coming? Like, awesome. Do you want to talk about the lodged ball? We don't bring that up. Um, but the point being is, like, I get excited when people are into the things that I'm into. Wrestling, it was an interesting one because when I was younger, I didn't like wrestling fan, which is interesting because I'm a wrestling fan. But you would talk to some wrestling fans and you could tell a lot of times they were just trying to spread whatever agenda they thought was, whether it's, oh, you talk to a hardcore fan and they're like, oh, do you watch Raw? And it's like, he's really into Ring of Honor, for instance. So they're about to jump into why Raw sucks, and you're like,
They
man, I
had
don't,
to be the smartest guy. The smartest guys.
yeah,
There's a lot
I
of
don't
that in
want
the
to do
wrestling
that.
community
Yeah.
too. Yeah, none of
Which
that.
is tough too, because like, I mean, we watch this for a pastime. We watch this because, you know, we've watched it forever. Again, I think for a lot of us, it's a connection to our youth.
Mhm.
So it's like, I don't have more respect for you because, you know, you only watch New Japan Pro Wrestling and I, you know, stick to NXT. It's just, oh, cool. Like, you know, I don't watch, you know, a whole lot of that myself. And I'll joke about it, don't get me wrong, but it's, yeah, I don't know. There's so many different opinions on it. And I think now more than ever, we see in such a tribalist age, um, it divides so much. Like every bit of news that comes out, especially if you look at like on the AEW side, every
Mhm.
bit of news that comes out, it's always like, you know, oh, they're doing this in response to it. And it's like, dude, just like, you know, I'm a very busy person in my life. And just I think like, how do you have the time for this? Like not to
Mhm.
be mean, not to, you know, throw around the touch grass thing, but it's like, man, like you don't
dedicating
work,
time
you
to
don't
a
got school.
podcast talking about this, and you're
Yeah,
telling
you
folks
know.
to touch grass.
Well, I mean, like, who's sitting around, you know, tweeting Sammy
Mhm.
Guevara because, you know, like, just dude.
Fair play.
But
Yeah. So.
I digress. I digress.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
Mhm.
It's an interesting dichotomy, especially among different groups of fans. I think for a while that's why I didn't get along too much with a lot of fans, or I wouldn't want to talk wrestling because it's like I'd be like, I'm better now. Especially like I love a good casual. I can, you know, put me with a casual all day. A dad and his son. Oh man, like yeah, I remember that. That was great.
Mhm.
Best, the absolute best.
Part of the best is like when folks are just getting into it and they actually ask you follow-up questions and are generally curious. Like the best, the best. One more thing about we should move on because I guess we do have a couple of big shows this weekend. Well, one big show. There's one match on Saturday AW Collision I want to touch on, but before we move on, about the place of pain. So, for example, my big thing about not really wanting to be too much outward of a wrestling fan was, you know what you're gonna get. You know it's fake, right? Every single time. And so, and then of course, like the folks are like, "Oh, it's fake. It sucks." So it's like, okay, I'm kind of used to always getting that, and I equate this to I'm not sure if this is like in the women's washroom, but in the like if you're growing up in high school, you got a men's washroom, someone's, you know, taking number two, and you always get some knucklehead. Yo, is someone taking a shit? And you never want to be the person on the toilet at that point in time. And so I would always avoid like, yeah, you know, I can wait until I get home, you know what? Or I don't have to go right now. And then sort of like how you get into office, like, brother, I need to go, I don't care. Or if you're at a concert, brother, I need to go, I don't care. It won't be my personality at work or wherever I go in a social setting, or if I go to work, it's like, yeah, no, I'm a wrestling fan. What do you want to know? Do you want to know anything? And yeah, that's about it. Be a wrestling fan and don't be afraid to go number two in public. Life's too short, is my.
I did it at a club once, and that was heinous.
Oh,
Yeah, that was I wouldn't recommend that, but you know,
that is hard
sometimes
time. That is
duty
like the
calls.
Dusty Rhodes should have included that in hard times.
Yeah.
And then the boss man prevented him from pooping in a club. Baba. God. Anyways, smooth transition. Anyways, if you're still here, we'll talk some real graps now, but thanks for sticking with us as we opened our doors to you to explain how we're into this crazy business and why we love it so much and why we can
And
just
real
like
quick too, before we do move
oh
into the
yeah.
actual
Mhm.
topics, I do want to note that like a lot of what I do say is in jest. Um, I look at it as something, especially nowadays, where it's like there's so little free time. The
Yeah.
free time that I do have, I just want to shut it on or turn it on and
Mhm.
just shut off for a bit, have some fun, you know,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
our Lord and Savior Triple H says, be a fan. Um, but,
Jiminy Christmas. Ah.
but it's tough sometimes. And I think there's, you know, even when I try to look at it less critical and you're like, well, just take it at what it's worth, you know,
Mhm.
there's still these like things that come up or things that you think. And I can't talk to Brooke about it because she just doesn't get it. So
Mhm.
I think part of why I want to do this podcast is to kind of get that chance to
Mhm.
express myself maybe a little bit more intelligently than I would have, you know, as a teenager doing YouTube.
Mhm.
Um, it's just fun. I mean, I think that how I pitched it to you was, we're already so involved in the world, whether we want to be or not. Like,
Mhm.
we might as well just have a little fun with it. Like, who cares? Like, this is
Mhm.
something we both clearly, have loved on and off for 20 years. Just give it a shot.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're married to it at this point, till death until we part. And yeah, like I think I mentioned it personally, like I've always kind of refrained from doing a podcast because it's like, do people really need to hear my honest to God two thoughts, my
Bit
2 cents
douchey.
on
Yeah.
this? And then it's also two more white dudes with a podcast, the white dude must pod. But then he said, we're overanalyzing. I mean, I think you mentioned that we both knew that CM Punk's dog Larry had died, and we weren't even watching wrestling. We just both knew that. It's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, you're right. We're too terminally into this
Yeah.
business. We might as well give it a
Even if
shot.
I didn't want to know it, I'd hear it from someone.
Yep.
I'd hear it from a friend. I'd see it on an Instagram story. I'd see
Mhm.
it in a tweet. I'd see it on like it's gonna somehow
Yeah.
enter my realm of stimuli. So
Yeah.
I might as well just lean into it because it's not going anywhere, even if I
Yep.
wanted to. Yeah.
Fair play. Now, moving forward to this weekend, I suppose, and thanks for sticking with us, folks. If you want to listen to our thoughts on the Royal Rumble and the outlook of the road to WrestleMania for WWE, and an outlook at All Elite Wrestling, and maybe a little look at definitely a little look at our independent promotion scene in the interior of BC and up along Vancouver Island. We're gonna get into some real graps now, but it's timely. The Royal Rumble's tomorrow, and personally, I've over the last few years, I've really found myself conflicted morally in terms of continuing to watch WWE, let alone follow it. 2 years ago was the lawsuit that was presented, Janelle Grant's lawsuit alleging sexual assault and trafficking against Vince McMahon, and seeing the company's response to that, their overall demeanor and how they kind of view their fan base or how they go about business in terms of now counter programming AEW when AEW is doing a show. That was really prevalent in 2025. And I guess a lot of it goes to Triple H too. Becoming basically WWE's Dana White. Like, okay, all these wrestlers here, just like the fighters, they're all chess pieces. I'm the brilliant mastermind that puts it together and need to be the focal point, and kind of acting like an unserious person during it. I've really fallen off a little bit recently. Like, my breaking point was over the summer. It was a great match. One of my favorite WWE matches ever, actually, was John Cena and Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Unbelievable. It was like James Gunn Superman versus James Gunn Superman. I loved all of it. And then Brock Lesnar, while he's still, I think it was mentioned 44 times in the Janelle Grant, uh, in the revised lawsuit, uh, just not really needing to bring him back. I thought, you know what? John Cena's last match in December will probably be my personal series finale for WWE. But of course, I'm always going to pay attention because my algorithm will just show me everything I'll miss if I'm even not watching weekly. But for the sake of this podcast, doing my best to get back into WWE. But from what I've seen, and I'm really counting on you, Ace, to really give me your thoughts on this. But we got Royal Rumble tomorrow. We have a build to WrestleMania coming. This feels like, I'm not sure the most lackluster is the right word to say it. It feels like there's no big story that will come to a close. It feels like there's no hot angle that everyone's gravitated towards. It's a contrast to previous years where you had Cody attempting to finish the story twice, or John Cena's retirement, his final WrestleMania. I want to get your thoughts recently. What sort of the vibes going into the Royal Rumble tomorrow? And is there anything that's sort of sinking your teeth? Is there anything missing? Really want to know what you think about this.
Yeah, there's nothing really that I found recently that I'm super invested with currently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I maybe for the wrong reasons, just because I kind of want to see where he ends up. I mean, Gunther and AJ Styles is something that
Mm-hmm.
it's excuse me. it is interesting to see, especially with AJ Styles now
Mhm.
filing for trademarks on what was it, the Phenomenal One and a couple of his.
Yes.
So
Yep.
the
So,
thought process behind it is like, well, does he, he said 2026 is his last year. Does
mhm.
he end up finishing it with WWE here? Does he win and continue it on? Or does
Mhm.
he, sign somewhere else,
Yeah.
like a New Japan or an
Yeah.
AEW?
Because it is
Um,
a retirement match, is what they say. I never thought
yeah,
maybe you're gonna have this retirement tour, but this contract, I don't know the exact date, but it's like coming up in a couple days. So you either need to sign
yeah,
like a year-long extension or it's your WWE retirement, but you may finish your career elsewhere. And he's got a
yeah.
lot left in the tank, even at 50 years old, I think he is now. But yeah, it's an interesting one just because it seems like his contract's actually up. So now there's a little bit of doubt now.
What is I don't know, like, one of the propaganda lines that I find they like to feed us in Unreal is that it's at its best when you're questioning and you don't know for sure. And
God,
um
we're gonna
so
have to talk about that
is
show at
yeah,
some point. I really don't want it, but
yeah,
we
and
will.
I don't
But
want to right now. Yeah, I was gonna say. Um but yeah, so it unfortunately in some cases that is right. I do want to see where this goes because when they first booked it, before the AEW rumors or anything started, before they first booked it, I remember thinking to myself, like, well, do you end him right away? Do you have him win and keep going? But then he's just beaten Gunther, who just beat John Cena, in his like last match. And um, so so I am interested in that.
Mhm.
But unfortunately for that, nothing else is really lighting the world on fire for me. Um,
Hmm.
Drew and Sammy will be fine. And Sammy will get a nice reaction, and I think that'll be really cool for him. But I don't believe for a second that he's winning.
Mhm.
So that kind of takes those stakes out of it. As for the Rumbles themselves,
Mhm.
I always find it tough. I always find that
Mhm.
wrestling, especially around the Royal Rumble Mania season, it's
Mhm.
always at its best when someone's chasing it, especially for a first time. I mean, when we
Mhm.
started watching wrestling, well, I should say more so for me, 2004, it was Batista and Cena, right? And
Mhm.
it's just like, yeah, it's their first, you win the Rumble, Rey Mysterio for you in that case. And obviously not everybody has to win their first title at WrestleMania, but when it's more exciting. Like, I mean, Cody Rhodes' story, like finishing the story, I should say, was the biggest thing for 2 years. Like, it was just, it was bigger than the fucking Rock coming back. Like, it was the biggest thing, and
Mhm.
it's at its best with that. And I think they tried to recreate it with Jay last year, and I'm glad they tried something like that. I don't think it ended up working out the way that
No,
them or any of us wanted it to.
but
But
I can kind of
at
get
that
it.
point,
Like he
give it a
was.
shot. Why
Mhm.
not? He was
Yeah.
so hot in the bloodline angle. He
Yeah.
was like, he was one of the reasons I was tuning in for
It,
that. In such a
I know.
group that already had five characters, so fleshed
Very
out. Like,
very briefly. So we went to Survivor Series in Vancouver. They had this. It was at Rogers Ramp, but for folks who are somehow listening outside of BC, there's the stadium, BC Place, right across from Rogers Arena, and in some of the entrance gates and the concession area, the concourse, there was a pop-up WWE shop there. And so you expect to see all the biggest stars have most of their merch available, the ones who would move them, the folks who kids would want to buy the shirts of, your Cody Rhodes, your Roman Reigns. Jay Uso had as much, I think the only
he's
one
everywhere.
who didn't have more merchandise available than Jey Uso was Cody Rhodes. And even the reaction to Survivor Series itself, I would argue Jay got a bigger reaction. I think the only one who may have gotten a bigger reaction than Jey Uso was probably Roman Reigns. But I want to say
Yeah.
even Jay had that beat. So I get it. It didn't work out. It was a weird one where as soon as they went with him for this main event push, it's like I want to speak to a sports psychologist about it. It's like he got worse and worse and worse by the passing month, and it just didn't work out, which is far too bad. But yeah, for this one, just I'm thinking about the Rumples. On the men's side, honestly, it should be Gunther, as you mentioned. Like the interesting factor about the match with AJ Styles, it's either okay, does AJ Styles retire or does Gunther lose after making John Cena tap out in his last
Like a
match
little bitch.
like a little bitch? Yeah, John Cena is a quitter. He gave up. Anyways,
He did not.
he
He
gave up.
let go.
He said
He
uncle.
let go.
He said I can't take no more.
I'm gonna make you say uncle.
But yeah, so it's either you need to capitalize on that, like don't waste John Cena's last match, but also it just doesn't look like they have those plans for Gunther to win. And I'm kind of looking at this men's rumble, and I think it's a little bit easier over the last couple of years to maybe see what the path to WrestleMania would be, because 2023, Cody Rhodes, who started out in WWE, comes back after going on the Indies, joining the hottest group outside of WWE, the Bullet Club. He's one of the executive vice presidents of AEW. He's one of the folks helping put on the biggest independent show in All In 2018. He's the first one to come back to WWE from AEW, and he was just James Gunn Superman. He was the white meat babyface to end all white meat babyfaces. And he was going to finish his story. He was going to win his first WWE championship by defeating Roman Reigns. That didn't happen. We'll probably get to that in a little bit. And then it happened again, and this time The Rock was involved. And both those years were gigantic. It made sense for Cody Rhodes to win the Rumble. And I thought John Cena was going to win it last year because it's his last WrestleMania. The biggest match he can offer is Cody against John Cena. But of course, Cena got his title match eventually. This year, there's no story, I suppose, that needs to be paid off on the men's side. I remember around Survivor Series time, you had Paul Heyman going, well, at around War Games, you'll be very clear about what the path to WrestleMania is going to be. And it seemed like it was going to be Cody and Roman Reigns for the third time. And whether it was Triple H saying, oh, we don't want to be predictable, or, a mixture of Cody and Roman both kind of playing backstage politics and wanting to go, I'm not losing to this guy, because they both want to be the top guys. And that's a good little mindset of rivalry to have. I dig that. It's old school. But yeah, everything got thrown out the window, and Drew McIntyre's a WWE champion now after getting beaten and beaten and beaten by Cody for months and months and months. So there's nothing really much to pay off there. CM Punk's the world heavyweight champion on Raw. There's an upstart star in Braun Breaker. CM Punk already beat him to start this year. Seth Rollins is coming back likely at this Royal Rumble. He had already faced CM Punk a billion times. It seems like the path is probably Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns. At least maybe that's how I think of it. So I don't know how you think. I don't know what your final prediction is going to be, but in these kind of instances, whenever you don't have a story to pay off, it's always pretty good to try and make a new star. Like a lot of these main eventers right now, closer to 40 than they are 30. One of my favorite Rumbles was 6 years ago. Drew McIntyre was around the same age that this guy is right now. And so the story was Brock Lesnar was a WWE champion at the time. He comes in number one. He's eliminating everyone halfway through. And then Drew McIntyre eliminates him and wins the whole thing. And they made a new star right there and then. Because he has so much charisma, and because anytime I saw him wrestling, he'd always stand out. And you need to make a new star. He's closer to 30 than he's 40. I think Jacob Fatu should win the men's Royal Rumble and go on to become the WWE champion and make a new star. What says you, Ace?
It's going to be Roman, which I am not huge already. I don't know what to tell you, kid.
No, elaborate. I want to know more. Like, I think I know where you're going. I want to hear more.
I feel like there's so many fun things they could do with this. And I mean, if you compare it to a lot of Rumbles, maybe last year, but like it's a really good field for, big names. You've got Cody, you've got Jacob Fatu, you got Roman, Brock, Seth's probably. I saw ESPN might have let the cat out of the bag on that one. Braun Breaker. There's a lot you could do, but especially in a place like Saudi Arabia where, they pop for nostalgia, they pop for big names. And I feel like that's the route they're going. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be Punk. I don't know if Cody's going to win the title back at some point, because that could always happen too. Yeah, there's a lot of ways they could go with. I don't see them going any other way, especially right now with everything coming out about, well, not everything, but Roman's comments on like creative in the last, like that's, people want
Yeah,
to say it sounds, people real quick, people want to say it sounds very like shooty. That's their works now. It's him, saying it was better when I was champ, and that's why I'm coming back to be champ. It's, in me, to me at least.
you see, because yeah, we'll talk about this. I might as well mention this, but like real quick, I will say of the what looks to be the realistic matches that they can offer right now on the men's side, I'd say CM Punk and Roman Reigns would be the biggest match they can offer at this WrestleMania because
Most
CM Punk
likely.
is still a big star in and of himself. And they kind of planned those seeds last year. Like I think the ship has sailed for Seth Rollins because last year Paul Heyman aligns with Seth Rollins in that three-way match and turns on CM Punk and Roman Reigns. It was probably going to be Seth and Roman this year. Seth got injured for realsies, and now he's going to take on probably his
Karma.
old group, Braun Breaker and his old group, the Vision. So Roman and Punk seems realistic, and that's probably the biggest match they can offer. But yeah, I wanted to get these comments specifically because the timing's interesting too. And as much as folks are enamored with the show Unreal, and there are aspects of it I do like, especially with how it's shot and how you can see an angle being presented, it kind of works as a crutch in a sense because if anything doesn't work out, or as a way, say, if they lose control of, say, what a talent does or says, or maybe their idea blows back in their face, it's sort of a way, it's all part of the act. And then because it's a reality TV show and reality
Enjoying
TV
the show.
scripted in a sense, yeah, drives me nuts. But Roman's comments were interesting, and I'm just gonna get these up here. What he said, and this is on Pat McAfee's
Yeah, I'd like to see
today.
the actual full quote because I
Yeah,
saw it in
so,
passing on Twitter.
yeah, so I got the full quote here. I'll start at the interesting spot. So he goes, and he's sort of like in character while doing this. I feel like this is his take, though. I'm a generous tribal chief. I give the people plenty of time. These young talent, they say we hog all the TV time. They'll complain about one thing, and then I leave an opening. I give them plenty of space to create whatever type of superstardom they want. Get over, kids. Get over, as in get over at the crowd, be a star, get them to love you. I was paraphrasing there, but you know what I mean. And then his quote continues, and we're here 2 years, and we're 2 years here now, and we haven't advanced. And that's kind of when Roman Reigns lost the WWE Championship to Cody. We haven't evolved. We have great leadership in Nick Khan. God bless him. What a businessman. He's a genius. But we have to be able to keep up with that creatively. And that's why people like me, people who are striving to be the very best, the greatest, the GOATs, the MJs, I just can't sit around and see mediocrity. And I remember, and this was brought up, he did an interview with Vanity Fair last year, Roman. He said that his contract was going to expire shortly after WrestleMania 42, which I believe is this year. And after that, he said maybe 1 or 2 years max. Since pro wrestling, you can always retire and then unretire whenever you want. But I wonder, just because of the power dynamic here, because I don't think this would have ever happened before with Vince McMahon, just because it was his company and he ruled with an iron fist. Now Triple H is the booker. He is the one that kind is in charge of getting the storyline from point A to point B. But Triple H isn't necessarily the boss anymore. The president of WWE right now is Nick Khan, because TKO, like Endeavor, purchased WWE. They had owned UFC. Now it's TKO. They're all together. So you have the president or the head of TKO, but you have the president of WWE, Nick Khan, who's also a board director, but also you have a man who owns stock and a man who's also the board of directors, The Rock, who's Roman Reigns' cousin. So technically, Triple H isn't the boss. So maybe Roman Reigns, a few months away from potentially having his contract expire and just lounging around, maybe he's displeased with what his situation is right now, his last year, his current creative, and maybe he's just not worrying about it because maybe he's like, I'm a big star. My cousin's a board director. I'm not fearing you. I'm not fearing to be able to get my truth out here.
Bit of a sidetrack, but the whole I'm gonna call it a promo because it was the whole promo that he had on Pat McAfee there. Was it just me or did it feel very, the only reason I'm still here is because you can't do your job, kid. It's called a promo. You're gonna have to learn how to do those.
What John Cena said to him And also,
It's
Roman Reigns is now a part-timer, just like how he was upset that Brock Lesnar was a part-timer way back
either
when. But you know
die a
what?
hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Everybody wants those kind of deals. And if I'm looking at that from Roman, because I can see where he's coming from. I mean, first of all, like,
100%.
although he's buying his own, he's sniffing his own farts a little bit. I mean,
Who
we
doesn't?
haven't advanced. I mean, Cody still has been a pretty good top babyface too, and I know he's believes that like I'll be the top guy and will continue to advance. Uh, so he has that belief in itself too. It's also kind of am I the way I perceive it, a little backhand to Triple H and the way his career has been
100%.
handled. And I want to say Roman's kind of a fault to that too, because if you're around for it part time, I should say, I mean, there's a lot of stop and start, you know. But recently, I'm just thinking this last year, okay, last year at WrestleMania, Paul Heyman turns on him. He comes back in the summer and he's feuding with a little bit of Seth Rollins' group. Admittedly, it's probably leading to a match with Seth Rollins, probably for a championship this year if Seth didn't get injured. But Roman's been gone for a long time. I think the last time he was on TV, he was losing a street fight, admittedly with interference, to Bronson Reed on, I think that was Crown Jewel in Australia. And what
He
has
really
happened
should have
since
been there.
then with Bronson Reed? Logan Paul, yes, that one. Logan Paul's more protected in that group than the guy who beat Roman Reigns. And if you're Roman and you want to say we need new stars, I can kind of see where he's coming from.
That should have meant so much more, that win from Bronson Reed. But
Mm-hmm.
it is what it is. To me at least, division's kind of been a disaster. So I won't say since it started, but the
Mm-hmm.
problems, see, we were talking about Unreal a little while ago. The problems really started with a lot of, the fake injury and working the boys, and unfortunately, in a lot of ways, karma kind of came around. And not that I'd ever wish that on anyone, because it's a horrible thing, but
Mm-hmm.
it never sat right with me to get your friends worked up that that you could be hurt, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Even in that, too, I don't know if you've watched it yet, but even in that, they were debating like, well, should we even tell LA Knight? And it's like, you're gonna have him go home thinking like, that's no. So the Vision's been a bit of a disaster, I think, especially since SummerSlam.
Mm-hmm.
But um, but yeah, I forget exactly where we're going with it.
Oh no,
But
just to
for
put a
the
to land the
Rumble,
yeah, to land the plane on the men's side at least, because as much as I want to, not completely discredit, but partially discredit Triple H, admittedly. I gotta be a fair man and give him his flowers when he does stuff well too.
of
We'll
course.
get to that on the women's side, but to land the plane on the men's side, I can kind of see where you're coming from. The predictable route would be for Roman Reigns to win the Royal Rumble. I'm hoping for Jacob Fatu. I also hope that younger folks are able to have good showings, because to ideally build some new stars for the future. I think the ship has sailed for this year for Braun Breaker to win, but you know what? I hope he has a good showing. I hope Obafemi has
I
a
think
good
he'll be the
showing.
Iron Man for sure.
Javon
Yeah.
Evans too. Trick Williams. Let's start to lay the foundation. We need a future. We can't have too many folks 40 and up. We do need some younger folks as well too. So there's that. But on the woman's side, and I'm not really sure where this one's gonna go. Like I do kind of want to give some credits about the whole. Maybe it's not building stars, but definitely elevating stars. Like a great call last year was Io Sky on a Raw defeating Rhea Ripley for the Women's World Championship, and Io Sky became an even bigger star than she already was. That was a good
Yeah.
call instead of having the one-on-one match with Rhea Ripley and Bianca Belair. I thought that was a good call. And then Stephanie Vicaire seizes the opportunity with Naomi, who's the women's champion at the time, pregnant. She needs to vacate the belt. Stephanie Vicaire comes from NXT and seizes the opportunity, and she's a new star. So that's good. And it's a little bit more of a limited field, I want to say, in terms of a match that you could really sink your teeth into. I think the betting favorites Liv Morgan, and God bless Liv Morgan. I don't really see the appeal in Stephanie Vicaire and Liv, or Liv and Jade Cargill, but there's some options there. Like maybe you get the return of Bianca Belair after all this time, after she's been out for ages with an injury, or the white hot tag team right now of Rhea Ripley and Io Sky. Maybe one of them wins and they challenge for the championship, and that's sort of like the little bit of a divide you got. But I am happy that there's some newer, younger stars on the women's side. I think that's been handled a lot better recently, and we'll see what happens. I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go with Bianca Belair returning, challenging Jade Cargill. I think there's still more of a story there. They were tag team partners. I think it makes more sense if Naomi were around, but you know what? Her and Jimmy Uso went to business for themselves and decided to be selfish and start a family. What are you gonna do? I'm kidding, but I still think there's something there with Jade Cargill and Bianca. So Bianca will be my pick. I'm not sure. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's two ways you can really go with it. You mentioned both of them, and Liv and Bianca coming back. I do think we probably see Tiffany Stratton come back in this Rumble. Not that I see her winning, but I do see her possibly making a return.
Mhm.
And again, even like you were saying, to credit Triple H is the women I found actually, especially recently, they've really been doing well. Just like kind of the tag division's better than it's ever been. Flushed out teams. They're not I mean, Charlotte and Alexa were kind of an anomaly
Mhm.
because they were thrown together, but that was sort of the story.
Mhm.
But a lot of like storylines in there that have been really well done. In some, we might not see the
Mhm.
complete play out of, but no, I think they've been doing a very good job right now.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. To me, I would almost rather see a Roxanne.
Mhm.
You know, I feel like if you were to do something like that, Liv's supposed to, gonna win it. Roxanne does something. I kind of see a triple threat route personally with either like Stephanie Vaquer or again just Bianca wins. Then you do her and Jade, which honestly, I could see Bianca doing that with a chamber. I don't think she needs a Rumble, but yeah, it's definitely to me. There's more you could do. There's more that I shouldn't say that you could do. They could do more with the men, but I think there's more they will do with the women versus the men's Rumble. To me, at least.
Fair play. And that's a good take. Yeah, and that's the thing too. I mean, obviously it's a big show tomorrow, the Royal Rumble, to kind of set the table for what we'll expect at WrestleMania on the road to WrestleMania as well. But there's still a couple months and a couple shows until then to eventually get from point A to point B. And speaking of point A to point B, I guess we should move on a little bit now. Our friends at AEW, All Elite Wrestling, looking ahead to future. They got pay per view coming up in Vancouver on, I think that's Sunday, April 12th. We got a big group of us going too, hoping for
We
a
will
great
be at,
show at
yes.
Rogers Arena. Love an AEW pay per view, except for having to rush to the bathroom in between matches because they just go one after another like rapid fire. But
See, I do
I
appreciate that
digress.
though over the four match pay-per-views that we see in WWE nowadays. So,
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sure we'll have another discussion about
oh yeah.
problems with minimalist pay per views. But yeah, so AEW, it's interesting because it's almost similar to WWE in a sense where this year there's not like a story that has to deliver on, like exiting 2024 and going into 2025. The story was John Moxley was the top heel, the AEW champion. He was holding the belt hostage, wanting someone to step up. He was sick of the state of the company. He wanted someone to step up and take that title from him. And it eventually happened with the coronation of my guy, Hangman Adam Page. And as great as a match and moment that was, it was sort of short lived because while the Hangman lost to Samoa Joe with some interference, the goal was to eventually put the championship on the current champion, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, MJF. And to me, that was a little bit of a bizarre one. Like, I like MJF, nothing against him. I don't think that him being Happy Gilmore's son made him the biggest superstar and one of folks clamoring to be champion. But the way it's sort of played out now, they've kind of got a. I guess I'm not sure who's supposed to take the belt from him, but or when. But they've set up the story where there's a field of challengers, like a bunch of folks want to be the top guy. And I like folks who want to be the top guy. Kenny Omega, good Canadian boy. Swerve Strickland, Pacific Northwest, Tacoma. Hangman Adam Page, my guy. And then Andrade El Idolo, who's recently come in from WWE after finally being allowed to work after some legal issues, not criminal issues, but like, he got fired no compete clause, etc., etc. So I have no idea where it's going to go. Is there anything that you kind of want to see how this plays out in terms of how who beats MJF or where it happens or what? Or do you have an idea or a preference, I suppose?
Well, real quick too, I was gonna say like I do think some people were a little, I won't say concerned. Concerned's not the right word, but they were a little curious as to why I think MJF won it back. I think that was, yeah, I could be wrong, but I think in a lot of ways that was them really leaning into the youth movement of,
Hmm.
hey, I
He's
mean,
still
when
under
he finally
30.
re-signed, what was that? Yeah. Yeah, 96, I think he was born in.
Yeah, he's a
He's,
29. Like, he's our guy.
he's still got a
He's
long time.
our hood. He's in our
Yeah.
age range.
Like
He's our guy,
honestly,
you
like
know?
we're gonna get off topic here, but even like when I first started seeing MJF, to me, it felt like me on there in that sense of like, somebody
Mhm.
our age, somebody our
Yeah.
generation, because it was
Mhm.
a business dominated by
Mhm.
people so much older than us, right? So I was like, we finally get some representation at the
Yeah.
table. And
Oh yeah, brother.
but no, I think an MJF, I think by far is their biggest produced star is debatable, but to me, homegrown, like that's their guy. And
Mhm.
so I don't see a problem at all putting the belt back on him. I don't think they have any plans, at least anytime soon, to have him drop it. The nice thing I will say about an AEW versus the WWE is that they won't necessarily just keep it on him forever because that's what you do. You could see, every title reign doesn't need to be record breaking, and you could
Yes.
see him drop the belt at, Dynasty when we're there.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I don't think there's anything. I do think they'll eventually try to go back to Hangman. And I mean, I can't remember even the last time when or sorry, not Hangman, Kenny Omega.
Mhm.
Because I do see kind of that similar run of like, I got one more badass spear left in me. I got one more one
Yes.
Megan Angel. Say, I think that's probably the route they're going at eventually.
Yeah.
Um,
I need to go off because yeah, I say I'm not sure when because not just the folks that we've mentioned, but and that's the thing too with the records. I'm gonna get off topic. I'll get on back on track. I'll land the plane here in a little bit, but
I'm glad we get off topic. That's the fun of this, man.
the best of it, the best. It's yeah, I love it so much. I love you so much, Ace. Quite frankly, this is a good. Hopefully, you
Gonna make
guys,
me cry here.
hopefully you, the listener and the watcher, are enjoying this too. Having the time of my life.
Oh
But
man,
but
me too.
hey man, yeah, because like when Triple H got the pen and he was the booker in WWE, there were a lot of record breaking title reigns. Like everyone had to have the longest reigning so and so. And if everyone has a record, records don't really mean too much.
Yeah.
So I had no issue with the Hangman losing as a surprise to Samoa Joe 4 months into his championship reign. We'll see how this pays off. And if I don't know they're going to do this because of how TV played for AEW this week. I think they're going to do this match at their next pay per view in Los Angeles in March rather than what I was hoping for in April. AEW, it stands for All Elite Wrestling, and AEW exists in a large part because of Kenny Omega's contributions. The Elite, Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Cody at the time, Hangman was in there just starting to eventually grow more into his own. They were so popular in New Japan and along the Indies. Well, Kenny more in New Japan, but basically Kenny Omega having his trilogy, well, not trilogy, his 4 matches in New Japan Pro Wrestling, especially his first one that broke the Meltzer scale. So one of the longest journalists in professional wrestling, Dave Meltzer, always ranked matches on a scale of 1 to 5. His Kenny Omega's first match against Kazuchika Okada got a 6. It sort of like broke the scale or sort of like changed the goalpost for the scale. And that kind of helped New Japan get a little bit more attention. And then you fast forward to 2 years, Kenny Omega is facing Chris Jericho, who's was in WWE just a few months prior. This was foreign, almost a foreign concept to us. Now the Forbidden Door, people are going to different promotions, but Chris Jericho in his WWE presentation was challenging Kenny Omega, who was viewed as the best wrestler in the world at the time, or maybe 1, 2, or 3. And that did huge business for New Japan. And here we got Tony Khan. Uh, Father owns the Jags. He's a billionaire in his own right too. TV rights for sports and sports entertainment programming is going up. You have a bunch of free agents available like Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, Hangman, Cody, and really Kenny's contributions to wrestling is why there's an AEW, and him, it felt like he was always due to have a reign to be the top babyface in the promotion, to be the world champion. His only reign with the championship was when he turned heel, and he never got that due to recovering from injuries, recovering from diverticulitis. He almost died. It's a miracle he's back, quite frankly, and he's a little bit more back often now, and he looks great, the best shape he's ever been. I'm like, you know what? Sometimes if you got him, like, it's nice to play things out. Like, if you feel like you got a lot of wealth in your professional wrestling company to spread said wealth, you never know when it can be taken away from you, though. And if you all of a sudden have Kenny Omega in the best shape of his life, I think it'd be a good time for him to be the top guy and to have that AEW championship reign. I think the fans really want to see it. And a good place for him to win that championship would be in his home country of Canada at Rogers Arena, Sunday, April 12th, at Dynasty. I think there's about 5,000, 6,000 tickets sold. I'm sure they'll get 10 or 12,000. But if you want to pack Rogers Arena for an AEW pay-per-view, get this good Canadian boy, one of the best wrestlers this country has ever produced, get Kenny Omega in the main event here, give him his crowning moment. That's what I would love to see. I don't think they're going to do it, but that's what I want to see deep down as a BC wrestling fan and an AEW fan. I don't know about you.
Going back to the scale real quick, sidetrack of the 5-star ratings was one of my favorite tweets that came out at the time was, what if the scale's always been out of 10 and Meltzer just really fucking hates wrestling? Still one of the funniest tweets I've ever seen.
All timer.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I love it all so much. So
I don't know. I do see where you're coming from there with Omega. I think that's something they could do. It seems like right now they're kind of keeping MJF busy. Obviously, we saw this last week with Brody King coming out. I feel like that'll take up some time. And I mean, it's kind of nice, it's when guys get to a certain point like MJF has, it's kind of, oh, who do you want to work with, right? And I think it's cool that he can be like, love Brody, let's run that, right? So
yeah,
obviously I don't see him winning.
Yeah,
that gives them a chance to work for a bit, and it keeps him busy for a while, and it's
and to that too. I remember, so I went to Toronto in September for AW All Out. MJF's match on that show was Mark Briscoe in a tables and thumbtacks match, and MJF was really adamant in wanting to work with Mark Briscoe. And the night before, he was in Mexico City taking on Mystico, who's basically, the best way I can describe it, he's like Mexico's John Cena right now, just like this super top all-time great luchador, and always selling out Arena Mexico. And so MJF's just like, no, I want to do all this. So props to him. And with how he loses the belt, or who who takes the torch from him, AEW's their biggest show of the year, their version of WrestleMania now, is called All In. It's basically the successor to the first independent show called All In that kind of also helped set the table for what is now AEW. It's going to once again be at Wembley Stadium in London, England. I'm not sure they'll get 80,000 people like the first time, or maybe closer to 40,000, but AEW does have a top English star on the shelf right now in Will Ospreay after undergoing neck surgery. I'm not sure if he'll be ready by then, but that could be a candidate too. But also, I'd also really like to see Will Ospreay and Kenny Omega in Wembley too. So I'll hold out hope for that. But MJF to Will Ospreay in Wembley, if he's healthy, that could be another one too. But yeah, there's just a lot of contenders right now, and I don't know. I like it. We need a bunch of guys who can realistically become the champion and wants to be the top guy. So I do like that aspect.
I think not even just realistically, but just, it's something that definitely could happen, because a lot of time, there's lots of guys you could argue, oh, they could hold the championship, they could hold the belt. But there's very few times I think where it's like anyone could win it at any time. It's something I remember, for better or worse with the Attitude Era. There's a common theme of the time was anything could happen. And I think that makes fun TV. Maybe not as much hot shotting as we saw then, but I think that kind of stuff is
Yeah.
what makes
Yeah.
good TV,
No, no Vince Russo 2000 WCW nonsense where
Yeah, not
title
that crazy.
changes every week.
We're not vacating all
Uh,
the belts and hitting reset.
oh no, not at all. Yeah, and the resets too. Yeah, that'll be lore for another day. One more quick thing about AEW, because we are running out of time here pretty quick, and I do want to make sure we got some times to show some love for our independent promotions. But on Saturday after the Royal Rumble, it's AEW Saturday Night Collision. Usually when AEW has its TV show with a WWE pay-per-view event that day, usually they either try to get that show on another day, or they don't really deliver too much because they know that the rain may not be too good. But the main event's interesting because they got a new wrestler now, a man who was had the connection to Reign of Honor, which Tony Khan also owns, but he had spent the last decade in WWE. Tommaso Ciampa made his debut on Wednesday, AEW Dynamite, and to critical acclaim. And he's going to be challenging for the TNT Championship against Mark Briscoe, he has a history with. And it's basically the mid-card championship that he's going to be challenging for in his first match. And this is one where I don't know where it's going to go, because you just signed this new star. Do you beat him on his first night, or do you make him the champion on his first night? But he's also an old WWE guy, and that used to be a problem for AEW fans a couple of years ago, just signing ex-WWE talent and then them not wanting to necessarily do business or to elevate more of the homegrown stars or the non-WWE stars, I suppose.
I do think, for context too, not only is he an ex WWE guy, but he's an ex NXT guy.
That's a good
And
point.
like obviously we saw that with Adam Cole coming back, or not coming back, but coming into AEW back in God, that
Cole,
was
Samoa
5 years
Joe.
ago now.
God, don't
Jesus.
remind me. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
I was just doing the math. Anyways,
CM Punk's
so
debut in AEW feels like yesterday to me, man. Like 5 years. God, we are old and death is imminent.
but
Sorry.
I think context for that is important though, is it is an NXT guy too, where so many of those guys during the Wednesday Night War, if you want to call it that, are now or over the last few years, I should say, have slowly trickled their way through
Mhm.
to AEW.
Yeah.
So I do think they'll probably put the title on him right away.
Mhm.
I don't know if that necessarily falls into, oh, they're doing it right. Maybe I just I think of like Mark Briscoe as have having I can't even speak. He's had the belt for a while. And
Mhm.
so it's just, I think it's, I almost think you have to in that sense.
Yeah, you could do a sense. And I remember when coming from WWE, voluntarily leaving, Bryan Danielson's first match was with Kenny Omega. We watched in my apartment here in Kamloops, and they went to a
That's right. Yeah.
30-minute draw, and it was great. So it was a tie, but still fun. But I think it's a good point. Like, it is interesting just, when NXT was put on TV head to head and had a 2 week head start before AEW had its first television show.
More
That
of
was
that
a show
counter
that,
promotion you touched on earlier.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
NXT was put on TV to make sure AEW didn't get off the ground running. And AEW eventually got a new TV deal just a couple months later, and they became I don't think it was profitable, but they became like, it allowed them to operate without like completely losing money. So it is interesting to see all these stars who are part of that brand to counter AEW eventually going to AEW. And maybe it's another thing is the attitude. So Tommaso Ciampa did not get fired. His contract expired. He
Yeah.
voluntarily went to AEW. And in 2020 and 2021, a lot of former WWE wrestlers were going to AEW, but it was after budget cuts or just a round of cuts where just firing folks. And it could be folks who may have not gone up and down the indies, or may have been folks who reached WWE and they're just waiting for the callback per se, or maybe they thought, I was in WWE, I shouldn't have to lose here. I was a star in WWE. I was in the big leagues. And that kind of demeanor can just diminish the folks who are there to bring up this legitimate major promotion, the first competition WWE has seen in 20 years. It just diminishes that effort. And recently, I kind of seen with folks who have voluntarily left WWE and willingly gone to AEW, like Adam Copeland, the former Edge. He's 50, he's working his tail off. Ricochet has completely reinvented himself. It seems like Tommaso Ciampa has a pretty good attitude. And if he is, and another one, Andrade, this is his second time in AEW after first being fired, probably had boo-boo face and was just wanting to go back to his dream job. Second time, doesn't get over again with the WWE main roster audience, but then goes back to AEW. They love him, and it feels like he's working his tail off because now he knows that place ain't for me. So if Tommaso Ciampa has a really good attitude, I would have no issue putting the belt on because I think you can trust him to do business and to not only try and be a star, but to hopefully make other folks stars as well. So it'll be an interesting main event on the Saturday. I got too much wrestling to watch tomorrow already.
Wait, and it's funny because even in like preparation for this, there was so much I wanted to watch and so much I wanted to see before. And I didn't get to do any of it. I watched part of the not even part of I saw a clip of Punk on the Saudi presser. So yeah, I didn't get to watch any of it coming up too, but I'm hoping this is another thing that kind of gets me thrown into it a bit more.
A little bit more
Going
of a
forward.
routine, I suppose. And
Oh,
speaking of
100%.
all the wrestling we're watching, it's not just the TV shows, of course. We gotta love our local independent promotions. So of course, I think we're blessed in BC with having a lot of good independent promotions, like up north in the Prince George area, like Prestige, in the interior here, like in the Okanagan area, in the Thompson region, you got Thrash Wrestling. Lower mainland, you got a bunch of options like Nation Extreme Wrestling, All Star, Boom, and then in our hometown, Nanaimo, Vancouver Island Pro Wrestling, feels like the Fed's kind of hot. It feels like VIPW is kind of a hot act right now. I know
It's
you just
popping,
recently went to a
especially in
show.
Nanaimo. Yeah.
Yeah. I know you just went to a show in Nanaimo. Tell us about how that went. Like, I kind of got FOMO
Yeah.
looking at your pictures from afar.
No, yeah, it was a lot of fun. I try to make it to those shows. Usually they're Saturday nights, which works out well with my schedule now. Um, it helps too because we've got some friends that are involved in it. So that's always a little bit more exciting to kind of gives you that kick in the ass too to get out for it versus,
Mhm.
when you don't really have a pony in the race, you're kind of just like, I remember that I think they started in 2014. 'Cause
Mhm.
I was about 19. My dad
Mhm.
and I used to go to the shows. And it's been really cool to see how much it's grown
Mhm.
since, um, and see where they've gone with it.
Mhm.
Because I forget, I think it was when we were kids. I couldn't even tell you actually if they're still doing it. But ECCW, I
I
remember
think they
they
went
went
down a
under.
couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
Extreme Canadian Championship Wrestling, I think they were affiliated with
Oh,
the NWA after
oh,
WCW
okay, there you go.
folded, of course. But yeah, no, so like
Yeah.
they would do a lot of shows in Nanaimo, right?
Yeah, no, I remember those, especially as and there's still some guys too, who are even at like the one on
Oh,
Saturday,
wow.
which is pretty cool. Freeminator's been
Nice.
doing it, what, 20, 25 years now? So it's cool because like I
Yeah.
said, even we had touched on it earlier with like these guys are a part of your life, whether
Mhm. Mhm.
they're dudes that you've seen for just 20 years, and it's
Yeah.
cool.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so no, they're really hitting the ground running right now, VIPW. They're doing some good stuff.
Doing some good stuff. And we'll touch on the events that they got coming around here too, because I think we want to elevate like local matters. We want to elevate our independent promotions too, because there's so much good stuff going in BC. To start this year, and I've been in Cam Souls 5 years. I feel bad that this was my first show, but Thrash Wrestling had a show earlier this month at Moccasin Square Garden on the Tecumloops Reserve. Basically, how to describe it, it's a gymnasium with like 3 steps for bleachers on each side. I have coworkers that regularly go to a show. Also, a quick shout out to the guy who voiced our fun little intro to kick off the show, Jason Fooey, a coworker of mine. Also has a popcorn side hustle business, and he was doing concession at the Thrash Wrestling show to start this month. I am not a popcorn fan myself. It's not my cup of tea, nothing wrong with it, but popcorn's his gimmick. So I wanted to obviously be supportive, got a bucket. That was the first bucket of popcorn I ever finished. It was so
With
good.
the former brace face in you, or
No, Colonels. I had a bad experience with Colonels when I was like 4 or 5, and I always steered clear of it since. But
You're missing out.
no.
I am a popcorn connoisseur. And
Okay, well then maybe when Brooks reaching for your bucket at Dynasty, and then I'm reaching for it as well, and then our other friends too. Maybe all 6 of us can touch hands in the popcorn
there
bucket.
you go. That's the goal at least. I'll
That
be
is
under the bucket, but
that is pro wrestling. Oh, love it. But yeah, so shout out to Jason Fui. If you're at a Thrash Wrestling show in Kamloops, go get popcorn there. But yeah, had a lot of time, and it was a good family show too. Like I was stunned, like how many families went. I always think like maybe it's that old opinion of wrestling fans. I think I expect to see folks like me or the worst versions of me, but no, they're families. They're like couples going out on dates. It was a good showing. 250 people. Like it was bumping with how loud some of the fans were going and how the sound was traveling. And there are some highlights. Like there was a wrestler that stood out to me. His name's Battle Wasp. He's a luchador, but he's a bee. And the way he pumps the crowd is buzz, 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 buzz. And I'm like, how the hell did we not think of this shit first? Like it's right there. It's so good. So that was a lot of fun.
They get creative. They get fun.
I love it. And I think it's the thing too, because I've seen some independent wrestling shows before where it's like, brother, I know you're doing it for love of the game. You shouldn't be in the ring. These thrash folks are working their tails off. Both the women's matches, the remaining men's matches, like we had a 4-way match and they were doing crowd brawling, like chopping and doing spots in front of the fans. They're going crazy. A luchador does a dive off the stage. Folks are losing their mind. And a shout out to the main event, the champion Mentalo, who I saw him in Canadian Wrestling Elite when I lived in Saskatchewan there. He's the champion right now. He's taking on Cheetah Bear. What a great name. Holy smokes. And so it's a good show. About 2 hours in, folks are tired. And as a way to get folks in, if they called this on the fly, props to them. They knew the crowd brawling got folks into it. They did some crowd brawling halfway through, and everyone was locked in. The kids were locked in, and everyone had a good time. And because I had some coworkers asking, like, would it be something that I would take my kid to? Because, is it more like fighting or is it safe? And I'd say it's good wrestling. Thrash did a good job. I would say if you're going to an independent wrestling promotion, you can only expect blood if they're advertising like a steel cage match or if it's like a death match tournament. That's maybe the one you don't want to bring your kids to. But yeah, good family outing. I had a heck of a time. I can't wait till it can come back. I don't know. It's sort of punk rock in a sense. I do love I don't know. My love for independent promotions have grown over the years now.
How often do they run shows out there for you guys?
Not too much. I want to say maybe twice or 3 times a year. Like I'm looking at the events right now. And so I'm just looking at my notes. I don't have too many tabs open on my computer because I don't want to get like a Facebook notification just to come into this audio, you know what I'm saying? But they got 3 events coming up in February. So if you're in the Okanagan north or south, there's some good events for you. Friday, February 13th, 7:00 p.m. at the Rutland Centennial Hall in Kelowna. On Friday, February 20th, they're at the Luso Canadian Multicultural Society in Penticton. Friday, February 20th at 7:00 p.m. And then finally, White Hot Winter at Schubert Center in Vernon, Saturday, February 21st at 7 p.m. So I know it's not like VIPW in a sense where Kamloops is like I could be, from what I know, and please, if you're listening, folks, correct me if I'm wrong, Kelowna is sort of home base. Like, for example, like the show they got in Kelowna, Chris Masters, former WWE wrestler, is their headliner, I suppose. And so I guess they usually get those headliners. So I think Kelowna's
masterpiece, eh?
My understanding, home base. What a name. God dang. Yeah, so I guess that's it. But I think we have like 2 or 3 shows a year, but definitely want to try and make more because unfortunately I would just be out of town or had other commitments and had no idea. But yeah, good showing in Kamloops. Hopefully we get more shows. And taking a quick look, we'll throw in a little bit of a plugs quickly for our friends at VIPW and say, if you're listening and you're a fan of independent pro wrestling in BC or Canada, you want to make us in the know of events that folks should attend, by all means, don't hesitate to let us know on Facebook and Twitter and all our social media channels. But VIPW, Friday, I think it's a Friday. Either way, March 27th in Langford at the Legion. On Friday, March 27th, 6:30 p.m., VIPW. That's Friday, March 27th at the Langford Legion. 6:30 p.m. start. It returns to Nanaimo VIPW March 28th on a Saturday at the Centennial Building. That's a 6:30
Day
p.m.
before
start.
my birthday too.
That's I'm not sure if Brooke's listening, but I think that'd be an okay little
It'd
birthday
be a nice
present.
gift. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Not too bad. And then Saturday, April 25th, 6:30 p.m. at Mellor Hall, the Cowex grounds in Duncan. That's on Saturday, April 28th. And the big one, we've been to the first 2 editions of these shows, WrestleFest 3 at the Frank Crane Arena, Friday, June 19th, 6:30 p.m. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make this one. Hopefully I can, but we've gone the last
I'm gonna
2
make sure
years.
you make this one. Yeah.
Aw.
I'll start calling bosses. I'll start, Schultze's sick.
Yeah.
Can he come out and play?
I'm gonna be it's gonna be the scene in Smiling Friends where Charlie fakes being sick, and then somehow my boss is just at WrestleFest in Nanaimo with Frank Crane. Oh no, that's
have fun.
That's a fun show though. We've been the last 2 years. We've been
They're really cool. And again,
board.
I think it really speaks to their
Mhm.
growth because when they started doing these shows, they lot smaller crowds. And
Mhm.
now, like, man, you can't spit without hitting someone in those arenas in Centennial. So it's cool to
Yeah.
see. It's cool to see it now in
Yeah.
Frank Crane because it's just so much bigger.
Yeah.
No, it's been a treat seeing kind of them from where they started to where they are now, and just a bunch of guys chasing down a dream. It's sick. It's really cool.
Absolutely. Doing it for the love of the game. And that's the thing. Like, I mean, sometimes these independent professional wrestlers, like, sometimes they are just doing it for the love of the game. I mean, unless
Hot
you're.
dog and a handshake,
I trust PJ Laredo and all the promoters
Yeah,
to hopefully take care of the boys and girls a little bit better.
Of course.
But yeah, no, exactly. It's not like they're making a 6-figure contract, and maybe if you're bringing a headliner like a top indie star or former WWE or AEW star, you're going to get paid pretty well because you're a headliner. But these folks are doing it for the love of the game. They're working their tails off for you, and it's so fun to see them grow and to see these events grow too. And hopefully WrestleFest 3 is successful. I hate to be the role of Dave Meltzer here. I know they've claimed 2,000 the last couple of years. I've seen Frank Crane full of Nanaimo Clippers fans for playoff games, and those can feel like 2,000. Still, though, at the very least, I want to say 1,000 plus, like just doing like the eye test, which is still incredible for independent professional wrestling, let alone on Vancouver Island. So
well,
it's
hell, even I heard for the last show, like again, I'm probably wrong on this. It was at least 400 or 500. Like it's pretty packed. Yeah, like it was.
I want to say it was 500. It looked packed in there. It was unbelievable. Yeah. It's crazy because sometimes like an independent promotion is lucky to see 100 fans show up, and then
100%.
You got, I want to say there was like maybe 250 in Kamloops. Like that was my estimation, but if you're getting 500 in Centennial and Nanaimo, you're getting upwards to 2,000 at WrestleFest, at the very least 1,000. No, it's a great time to be a wrestling fan in BC with promotions and big shows and how much you can access across the world. It's a great time to start our podcast. It might be a good time to conclude a podcast too. We've given it quite the shift here. Maybe next time we won't just be flapping our guns and putting ourselves over for the first hour.
I think that's what they pay to see, or not pay to see, but I think that's why they're here. I hope at least. But no, this has been a lot of fun. I'm glad I'm glad that we finally did this. Because again, working on a project like this it's been really cool. I won't say dream come true because it's a little, but it's something that like I've really enjoyed, and seeing it come to fruition has been a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to see where we go with this.
Absolutely. And for Corey Ace Trelaw, I'm Aaron Schultz. Thank you for joining us for the inaugural Cup Chuck Wrestling podcast. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter. This podcast it'll be going up on YouTube, and we got our all our places where you can. Well, I mean, you're already listening probably on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. But thanks for joining us for the first step of this journey. Hopefully you can join us next week. It is Super Bowl Sunday next Sunday. I think Ace and I were going to try and drop something a little bit earlier in the day before
probably
kickoff.
Something like this too, where either the day before or before kickoff, because we'll probably be trying to watch. I almost said our Seahawks, but we're not really best friends with the Americans right now. So, but I'll say our Seahawks.
I'll say our Seahawks for the sake.
We'll be watching the Super Bowl regardless.
Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, stuff like this will happen. I imagine like we'll probably have to make plans for AW Dynasty because that's on a Sunday too. I'm not sure if you guys need to catch the last Hello Fairy back, but we'll have to figure something out. But yep, no, we'll be back next week somehow, some way. Keep following on to our social media channels. We'll see when we can get the next episode up, whether it's throughout the next weekend before Super Bowl Sunday or the morning of. But thanks for joining us for the first leg of this journey. Hopefully we have more to come and more to offer you and more fun to have. But for now, he's Corey Ace. I'm Aaron Schultz. This is Cup Check Wrestling, where the big boys play with each other.
Hey, you said it. I'm glad you said it. Okay.
All right. Until next time. Acers!
Sorry.